you to forget everything you think you know. I'm Autumn McLeese, the alternative rebel, and you're listening to the Know Better, Do Better podcast, where we challenge health narratives from traditional myths to holistic truths that transform beliefs. Let's not waste another minute, so join me now. Thank you for coming on the show today. This is a topic that I have wanted to look into. I have never received Botox. I'm very health-minded. Obviously, the podcast, I'm sure you can tell. But I know a lot of people that do, that they can easily kind of dismiss for various reasons why this is okay. This is safe. This is something not to worry about. So I am very interested to delve into this topic with you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I love to talk about this work.
And I know you're helping a lot of people when it comes to this matter, and you're a great resource. You're on Instagram, and we're going to give all those sites and places that people can find you. But let's just start off with the basics of, most people know or have heard of Botox, but what is it actually made of? And how, then we'll kind of move into like, how does it affect the body at a cellular level? I've always heard it's botulism. And the body, something about that's a natural thing that the body already has or something. So that's some of the justification that I've heard, but I'm curious to hear from you.
Yeah, in the industry and especially all over social media, you will hear all kinds of things. And a lot of the things that people hear have no basis in reality. They're derived from rumors or narratives about safety of Botox that aren't true. So,
Mm,
Botox is derived, let's set the record straight. It's derived from a bacteria, Clostridium botulinum. And that bacteria is largely present in our environment. So, you'll find it in water, in soil, it's on the fruits and the vegetables that we eat. It naturally occurs pretty much everywhere. And yeah, I suppose you could probably have it on your hands, especially if you were outside. But the bacteria form in which Botox comes from is very different from what is in Botox. So when this bacteria goes under the perfect conditions of time, being without air and being at low pH, it then plumes this neurotoxic protein, or we could also refer to it as an exotoxin. And once that occurs, the bacteria is completely consumed. It is no longer the bacteria. This new thing that is made has its own genetic code, it is its own thing.
mm,
That is what is in Botox. That is what Botox is. Botulinum toxin A neurotoxin, which you're right, you've heard it referred to as botulism toxin. And that is the exact protein that causes the symptoms of botulism or the disease known as botulism. So, yes, that is what is in Botox.
Okay, so this all sounds very interesting already. How can this be labeled safe? Like, what does the research say? How do they get around this? And then I'd like to talk about like the long-term accumulation of repeated injections over the years, and of course, what this does at a cellular level.
It's a really good question. And they can say that it's safe because they will default to the dose or the amount that somebody is using. They will say, well,
Mm,
because you're only receiving millionths of 1 milligram, or said another way, you're receiving billionths of a gram. Okay, they'll say it is not enough to cause this disease pathology in the body. And so, obviously this product went through a series of trials, rather small trials. The original ones on which it was approved for were only cosmetically were only a few hundred people. And in repeat injection sessions is when we saw more of the adverse events happen after people had received it more than once. But yeah, they can say
mhm.
that it's safe because the dose, it's kind of that age old saying, the dose makes the poison. But what we're finding is that because of the lethality of this product, it is so very, very lethal. It is
Is it
capable.
really?
Very. It is.
Oh,
Yep. It
wow.
is by definition. If you were to compare this, we could call it a chemical. Okay. I know it's a neurotoxin, but chemical to anything else anywhere in the world. This one by far is the most lethal thing that you will find on the planet. It's the most poisonous poison. There is nothing else that you will find that is more lethal. It's a waste of time for anybody to try to spend any brain power even comparing, because botulinum toxin A is incomprehensibly lethal in comparison to everything else. Wild.
So, okay, so and I want to go back to how does it work? Like how does
Yeah.
this neurotoxin chemical like paralyze the muscle? What is that function that's actually taking place that women are looking for?
Well, it's causing muscle paralysis. So when this
Is
neuro
that because it's so toxic? It like
it's because it is its innate mechanism of action. This is what we know what to do, and this is what it does. So if you were to look at botulism cases and why they're almost always fatal, so if someone were to eat a canned good that is tainted with botulinum toxin A, or they would get it from a wound that becomes infected, there's multiple ways that you could get it naturally occurring. Babies are at a great risk because they ingest the spores if they eat honey, and then this neurotoxin will plume in their intestines, right? And because
well, I
it's
didn't know
without
that's
air,
what that was about.
they ingest the spores, and then it grows in the intestine area where there's no air, where a length of time before it moves through the body, and then that's what causes botulism that then moves systemically into their body. And so naturally acquired botulism is the same thing that can happen from using Botox. It's just that it doesn't happen as frequently because the dose is so small. So what it is doing in the body is it's causing paralysis to the muscle. And so it works by inhibiting the release of a neurotransmitter that is in the neuromuscular junction. And that neurotransmitter it's called acetylcholine, it tells your muscles to contract. And this
Mm.
neurotoxin, when you use it, it inhibits that function at the end of the cholinergic nerve. So that nerve can no longer properly communicate, and then the muscle experiences paralysis. But if any amount of this toxin goes outside of the muscle, then we see systemic side effects occur, and usually symptoms of botulism become present.
So what are those symptoms of botulism? You made the example of babies and honey, which I guess I didn't realize that that's why babies are not recommended to consume honey. I thought it was like a choking thing, but it's actually because of that. So
Of the spores.
what are some of those symptoms, whether, baby or adult? What does that
Yeah,
look like?
the symptoms are very similar, whether it's naturally acquired botulism or botulism that you get from using an injectable. Most people, when they think of botulism, they think of the clinical picture that's the most severe, as in someone can't hold up their head, a baby would be very floppy. They have drooping on one side
Mm.
of their face. They can't open their eyes properly. They probably have double vision or tunnel vision of some kind. They start to experience paralysis that it's flaccid descending. So it starts at the top and it moves down. And so a person will present with inability to swallow, inability to breathe. They may gasp for air. They may collapse. They could have a seizure even. They could experience cardiac issues, ultimately cardiac failure if it's bad enough. The inability to use their legs. They'll experience paralysis in any muscle in anywhere in the body. When people get this from injectables, the symptoms present similarly, but usually a more mild form of it. And then they also often have the whole central nervous system side of things. So their body will be very deregulated in that they'll have racing heart rate and anxiety. They may have headaches. Vision disturbances are really common. They may vomit or have loose stools. On the other flip side, could have a paralyzed a bowel or bladder where they can't use the bathroom properly. In every single person, it does manifest a little bit differently. I mean, we see some themes, of course, across the board, but any given person might cycle through those symptoms differently from mild, moderate to severe.
Wow. And how soon after do symptoms typically appear for someone? Are you able to, like, do people typically correlate with this came from my injectable treatment that I just had? Are they off to the doctors to try and figure it out? Like, what does this usually look like?
Sometimes it is, again, different for each person. So we have a few different camps of people. We'll have one camp of people that know upon administration within 15 minutes or less that something went really wrong. And these are our folks that probably had a administrator accidentally, nick a blood vessel. And then in which
Mm.
case that neurotoxin went into the blood system and then it was cycled through the whole body very quickly. That's when we see our most concerning and severe adverse events, when it goes into the bloodstream like that, because it gains access
Hmm.
to everything really fast. Other people, it'll be 4 or 5 days. And as the toxin does what it does, it begins to take hold. Small amounts of it leak outside the intended area and then produce the systemic toxicity. And then we have people who are many weeks out from their treatment or even years. And it's more that summation or cumulative effect. So they've had multiple treatments, and the first few were okay. And then they had this summative, or summation is the correct word, effect. And then they become gravely ill. It
Mm.
depends.
Wow, this is so concerning.
Mhm.
Concerning is a word, and I'm sure you've seen the worst of it in doing all that you've been doing. How long
Yeah.
have you been at this now?
Yeah, so my sister acquired botulism in 2016, and that's what originally got me interested in learning about the neurotoxin. My dad was a molecular biologist. Very early on, when we were trying to figure out what was wrong with her, we
Hmm.
knew it was the toxin, and that's sort of what began my research. Were those very early conversations with my dad and his access to literature and databases with research that not everybody would have access to because of what he does or did. My dad passed away in 2019. And so I got on this train where honestly, I wanted to cure my sister. I'm very, very close to her. We're just under 2 years apart, and she, most of my life, has been almost more like a motherly figure. I mentioned off air
Hmm.
that my mom has been sick with Lyme disease for 38 years, and so I grew up in a home with a mom that was not super present because she couldn't be. My sister fulfilled that role for me in an amazing way. So when she became sick with botulism, I was afraid that she wasn't going to make it, and so I wanted to find the reason why, and I wanted to find a cure. And of course, there is no cure. But that's what led both of us together into finding the support group online, the Botox Dysport Side Effects Group, that now I am helping to facilitate just because of my interest. They asked me 5 years ago on the team. And so, total length of time, I've been doing this almost 9 years.
Wow, that's incredible. What would you say when it comes to how does Botox and these toxins interfere with the body's natural detoxification pathways? Because obviously, we talk a lot about that here on this podcast. We have on holistic health practitioners to try and look at doing certain things naturally and how we can support the body. So that's obviously an important aspect for us to
Yeah.
be healthy, is to be able to have our detox pathways working optimally. And is there any interference when it comes to this neurotoxin and those pathways?
We believe there is. And so I can tell you that there's not a lot in print, but anecdotally, when we've surveyed and we've watched many thousands of people over the last decade, we see reoccurring themes. And one thing that some people like you, the holistic practitioners and naturopaths, also agree with is that there is something happening with the lymphatic system. And I believe that to be
Hmm.
true as well. So when we're paralyzing our muscles cosmetically in our face, or any muscle for that matter, hyperhidrosis, if you're receiving it in your armpits, for instance, we're going to reduce
Wait,
that.
what's that?
That is an approved indication where people get it for excess sweating, and they receive
My
it in
gosh,
their
are you
armpit.
serious?
I am very, very serious, and it's
Oh,
temporary.
no. There are your armpits are crucial
Crucial for
for
lymphatic.
for,
Mhm.
lymphatics, yeah, and breast health and armpits. I mean, that's a big deal.
Big deal. And we're seeing injuries as a result of people specifically using that treatment. But so to circle back around, there is something really adverse happening with the lymphatic system. And then we can go into more, detox things and why this toxin can't be detoxed. But I believe those pathways are crucial and play a big role, even though we need to see more research occur.
So what else? You're saying that they inject Botox into the armpit
So there's a
or just bot
Yeah, but
go ahead.
botulinum toxin A. So all the commercial drugs contain that neurotoxic protein. So whether it's Botox, Dysport, Xeomin, Jeuveau, Daxxify, and then our newest one that just was released a few months ago, Letiboo. It's all the same neurotoxic protein. Okay. And then, of course, it's approved for narrow uses. So in the face, if we're using it cosmetically, it's approved in the upper half of the face. And then therapeutically, we have the hyperhidrosis, which I mentioned. We're also using it for migraine treatment. Neck cervical dystonia is the term. Spasticity is another one. So people who have like cerebral palsy or other neuromuscular conditions will use it for spasticity. And there's a number of different therapeutic indications. It seems like all the time we're getting more and more on the market. And then, of course, on the flip side, we have the whole off-label part of things where doctors and practitioners will basically administer this neurotoxin into any muscle at any dose that they deem it will be helpful for. Most of the use is off-label. And that's, of course, really concerning. So like for TMJ, that's another one for the grinding and clenching. Very, very popular. In fact, so popular that we hear providers all the time say it's an approved indication. It is not. The FDA says no, that it probably will never be approved because animal model studies have shown that it's causing jawbone loss specifically to that treatment. And also that muscle, you think of your masseter muscle, it's your largest, inch by inch, forceful muscle that we have in our body. It's a very strong muscle and it sustains movement all day long. And so we put this neurotoxin there, and just because we move that muscle constantly, it doesn't stay where you want it to. It moves and causes people to become very sick. But those are just a few indications. But again, that off-label use is one of my biggest concerns. It appears as though there's no muscle group that's off limits to these manufacturers. They have put it everywhere. I mean, in the male parts, even they call it scrotox. They're putting it in,
What?
In the female, anatomy areas even too. We're using it for bladder incontinence and all of these places where you're just like, what? Why would we purposefully cause paralysis to these important muscles?
I am absolutely blown away. Like, this is complete chaos.
It is chaos.
It's
That's the way I
ludicrous.
describe
It's
it. And then our group,
wow.
unfortunately, picks up the pieces because people become very ill and then they have nowhere to turn. And then their doctors say, well, I've never heard of that side effect happening before. I don't think it's from the Botox you had. And then they make their ways through our doors in the support group, just looking for answers and any help that they can find to help them, to treat them.
Yeah, I'm aware of some of the sketchy side of science and what is allowed when it comes to pharmaceuticals and these regulations and things. In fact, there's a really good interview on Joe Rogan. I'm trying to remember his name. I think it was Dr. Abramson. And nothing to do with our topic, but my whole point is that he got to sit in on a trial. He was actually behind the scenes with a huge pharmaceutical company, and he exposed in that interview just some of what they are able to get away with. And we have no idea. Like, we think we can be so trusting of it. And in reality, that's like, there can be so much shady stuff going on that, yeah, we shouldn't be so. Yeah. Oh, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
And that applies to this scenario. So this product comes with an FDA black box warning label that was implemented in 2009. This was
what does? I missed what you said.
Yeah, so this product comes with a strict warning label by
Botox.
the FDA. Botox does, or all of the commercial.
So it's got a black box. It's got a black box warning.
Yep.
Okay.
Stating that this product may cause severe life-threatening side effects or a disability or even an incurable disease known, well, they call it the symptoms of botulism in the label. And that happened, that was implemented after over $600 million in payouts were awarded to victims who either did pass away, they had a fatality, to their families, or they became severely disabled from using the product. One man was a man by the name of Douglas Ray, and he received the toxin off label for a cramp in his right hand. He had a cramp that was very debilitating. So they thought, we'll relax the muscle with Botox. But that treatment, then the toxin spread from his hand all the way up to his brain and caused a fatal coma. So that's just one example. And he was the largest payout of, I don't even know how many hundreds of millions of dollars. But then the FDA said, okay, well, people are dying here. There's some research also showing that this may be more dangerous than we initially thought. So then they put the black box warning label on it. But somehow, and I've watched this label change over the last 10 years or so. I've been researching it, and every time a change happens in that label, it is recorded, and that's public information. So people can go and they can look that up. But what's interesting to me is how the label has changed. And here in 2025, we still have a statement in the very bottom of the label, really, really tiny, that says there's been no definitive cases of severe adverse events or botulism from cosmetic use. And that's not true. I can name people who were awarded in payouts that were treated cosmetically. There's multiple studies and people who are receiving antitoxin on a regular basis. Even today, there was a gal just a few months ago, Allie Hallett, who received the product and used antitoxin. And yet this little statement is still in this warning label. I can't make sense of how are we getting away with that. So you're saying it like blows our mind. Like we have all of this verifiable evidence of what's happened to people, but yet we have this piece of paper from our government saying this hasn't happened. It's concerning. And in fact, Public Citizen, which is a huge focus advocacy group that works really hard to help increase regulation surrounding drugs, not just this drug, all drugs. They're an incredible organization. And they were the ones actually on the fighting end back in 2009 to get this black box label for Botox implemented. And now they've repetitioned the FDA to change the label. And the FDA has received their petition. They have accepted it and they are investigating it. But it has been over a year now since this whole process was started. And so any day now, if we don't get either a change in the label or information on what they're going to do, this advocacy group will take the FDA to court to demand the change. It will go in front of in trial. So we're looking forward to that, as it should be, because somebody has to be held accountable for this. This is just one example of a major error in that patient safety literature.
Yeah, this stuff riles me up, and people are just way too trusting in today's day and age. So yeah, but that's what we're here for. We're here to educate and awaken them to what you have to offer and what you've shared so far. So you were saying it can't be detoxed out of the system. Why is this? How do we know? And I'm assuming then that means that it's just accumulative. So every time you get it, you're adding to the levels that you already have accrued, and we're just adding to those.
Exactly. And this is the very piece of information I wish more people understood. So first of all, we know that it has a cumulative effect. We know this from research. We know that 1 unit of Botox corresponds to about 20 million molecules or toxin molecules. And each molecule then intoxicates one nerve. So you can think like I got 50 units of Botox, you can multiply that by 20 million. We're talking a lot of nerves intoxicated. And so then we have this summation effect. The more you get, the more dangerous it becomes for a person or any organism. And I have a post up on NeverTox, and I'm going to kind of go through it a little bit here today. So I'm going to follow my notes because it's such crucial information. And I haven't had a chance to get this into any podcast I've done yet. So when this neurotoxin was first approved, it was thought that the body would inactivate it like a foreign substance with other circulating cells that would then engulf it, or we know these as protease, and that they would degrade it. But that doesn't happen, and we know that doesn't happen because the neurotoxin is far too stable in the body. That was the first thing. Then the second line of thought of how it would detox or leave the body was that it would go through the renal system and it would be excreted, through your kidneys and then your urine. But the problem is we've already debunked that because we know based on size of the that is just too big. It can't do that because it's just too darn big. 150,000 kDa, in fact, which is huge. And that was the first thing my dad said, by the way, when my sister confessed to him I had Botox. He was like, hold on. And he looked up botulinum toxin in his little thing. And he was like, oh my gosh. He's like, that protein size is massive. He's like, Gretch, Heidi, you have no idea how big this is. The bigger the protein size, the more potential for severe damage in an organism.
Mm.
Okay, and then the third and the most plausible, which you will hear repeated over and over and over again by everybody, is that the body metabolizes it. And that's done through the liver, and that it will inactivate the neurotoxin through these metabolites. And even though that is really, really plausible, there's zero, and I mean zero evidence in the way of studies, even animal models, that show this occurs. So actually, what we see in studies is more the flip side, that this neurotoxic protein has an extraordinary persistence in the body, that it stays on the cellular level, and that we could compare it more to a virus like HIV or varicella. Or I had another one written down that's really good. Varicella. And what was the other one? Polio. And people who weren't fortunate enough to have a vaccine for polio, like everyone's had that, it seems, if they made it, they suffer with long-term debilitating side effects and even relapses far after their initial onset of the disease itself. And so this neurotoxic protein in an organism is more reminiscent of what those type of things do.
Wow. I'm glad you shared that, because that was, oh, I'm just thinking of people,
Yeah.
worried for them now,
Yes.
especially the
Me
ones
too.
that, keep getting it. They have a schedule.
Yeah, for me, it's, and everyone will argue me on this if they're industry folks, and, because it goes back to the dose makes the poison argument. But for me, because of what I've seen, what I witnessed firsthand in my sister, and then now thousands of people that I've watched come through our doors in the group, and then also my friends there that I'm really close with, it's a question of not if, it's a question of when. So even if someone can successfully use this neurotoxin for 10, 15, 20 years, at some point they are going to suffer catastrophically, and frankly probably are suffering, but just haven't connected those dots, that the brain fog that they have, the autoimmune condition that came out of nowhere, the wonky thyroid they now have to treat, the early perimenopause symptoms, or whatever it may be, they're not attributing to the fact that you're using this neurotoxic protein on a regular basis.
Such important information you're sharing with us, Gretch. Now for the eager question that we are all waiting for.
Yeah.
What are some natural options that we can do to just help prevent premature aging and, support the natural aging process?
Totally. I'll go into like the product type of stuff in a second. But I think above and beyond, the most important thing is to reduce stress in our life and drink water. I know it sounds so basic, and we all say this and we hear it all the time, but it seems like it doesn't matter how much we hear it. A lot of people still aren't doing it. We need to be drinking half of our body weight in ounces per day. We need to reduce stress, period. It's so, so important. And I've noticed in my own life, just with the simple addition, I have one of those, big drink bottle now that encourages you all day long, drink more, you're almost there, at the times. That when I incorporated that and I'm drinking just one of those per day, it's true. My skin looks better. I sleep better. I feel better. And then because I'm drinking the water all day, it's reminding me, hey, am I feeling a little bit stressed? I do these little mental health checks. Maybe I need to go for a walk. Maybe I need to sit down and have a little devotion and quiet time. So the two really for me go hand in hand. But as far as natural things to reduce or combat the signs of aging, which in my mind, I do see aging as a beautiful thing. So I'm not trying to achieve perfection ever. But of course, we want to look our best. And there are natural things that we can do. I know for me, I've seen huge results from incorporating rose water glycerin into my regular routine in the form of a toner. It has a nice hyaluronic acid base to it, and it smooths and it plumps and it fills, and it's completely topical and natural and works really well. And then, of course, I pair that with muscle training. So whether it's the silicone patches or the kinesiology tape or the frownies, that holds your muscles in place while you sleep, more of like a cast. All three of those work great for me. And I use them, you can see I have full movement, but when my forehead is relaxed, I have very few static lines. I mean, they're there, but they're fine. And I think that that is an incredibly healthy and easy thing that people can incorporate on a daily basis.
One of those, are you talking about like the scar tape that's like that sticky silicone?
The kinesiology tape, usually it's
Is
used to
that what that is?
hold
Okay.
muscles in place. Yeah, and I should say that not all brands are created equal. You want to pay attention to the adhesive that's on it and make sure that it doesn't irritate the skin and doesn't have anything yucky in it. There's some that are better than others for sure. But yeah, I've seen great results from those, and you can cut them to size. That's and they last
Hmm.
longer than some of the others that you can buy. I love it. It works well for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned the frownies. Definitely have
Love the
those.
brownies,
And
big
you know
fan of
what?
brownies.
And you know what also has been so great that I've been doing for, gosh, I don't even know how long, probably coming up on a year, is castor oil.
Love
It's kind of
castor oil.
rotating that. Castor oil on the face. Oh man. Like I noticed just some difference with that alone
Yeah,
and doing that night after night.
I've used it as well, and it has such a nice moisturizing effect. And I think some people take it internally too. Now, I haven't tried that myself, but some people do, or they put it on their belly button, is it, or something? I've heard all kinds of modes and methods, but I mostly just use it topically if I do use it. But yeah, and then the other one, kind of along the similar, well, it's not similar, but this reminded me of it, is the tallow. People are reporting really good results from beef
Mm-hmm.
tallow. I'm amazed by it. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
tried it yet. It's on my list. I got to try it.
There's actually a great company that we had on the podcast called Honeybee Hippie. They
Wonderful.
make natural tallow products with honey infused, like within some of the products and ingredients. So
I love
love
that. Well, I
them.
know honey is loaded with antioxidants. So honey
Hmm.
on the skin is great. And you can eat honey too, as long as you're not a baby and you don't have a developed immune system, of course. But
Right, right.
yeah,
Well, as we wrap this up, what are 1 to 3, I'll kind of give you some leeway,
yeah.
things that you wish every woman knew before they said yes to their first injection?
First one is I wish that across the board, universally, everybody knew that it had the black box warning label, first and foremost. I hear all the time, daily, every single day, I did not know that. And people will talk about the consent forms that they signed, and they're all over the place. And most that I've seen do not adequately go over that warning. So that's the first thing. The second thing I wish they knew is just what we talked about, that if you embark on the use of this toxin, that it may be in your body indefinitely. And we have very little research telling us or showing us how it leaves the body, when it leaves the body, and if it leaves the body. I think that whenever we're talking about a neurotoxin, that we need to take that into account. And the third thing that I want people to know that you're never alone. And if you use this product and you do experience side effects, that people oftentimes are embarrassed that it happened to them, or they don't want to share, or they want to take it all on their own. And that's not healthy to do, that you should tell somebody, and that you should surround yourself with a support system to help you through it, because you're certainly not alone. And there's been many thousands of people who have also reacted adversely to the.
Hmm. Thank you for those. And I had a question that just popped into my mind. What is the difference between filler
Mhm.
and Botox? And then also, there's something known, I think it's called PSP, where they take your own blood
Mhm.
plasma and use that. Would that be like a safer option? What are your thoughts on those two before we conclude and get your website and all the things?
Okay, so filler is totally different from botulinum toxin A. It does not work by paralyzing the muscle. When you think of fill, you're plumping or adding volume. And most filler is derived, or they'll call it hyaluronic acid filler, but it is derived from bacterial fermentation of the Streptococcus bacteria. And so this is very different. Yeah, so people in the industry will say,
See how they.
yeah, yeah. They'll say, "Oh, it's completely safe. Your body makes it. You make it all the time in your body." Yes, yes, they are right. You do make hyaluronic acid endogenously, continuously in your body, in your organs, and wherever tissues. But this that we're putting into the body from the pharmaceutical side is very different from what our body makes. It is derived from streptococcus bacterial fermentation. And so when we introduce that into the body, it is a foreign particle, foreign protein. And so, those detox things I talked about, we got to ask ourselves, well, how then do we detox that one, right? And will this elicit an immune response, an adverse one? Yes, it can, and it has in many. The product Juvederm, which is one of the oldest HA fillers, has well over 400 adverse events listed with it in the databases. I mean, think of 400. I think it's like 600 now, but that is an incredible amount of things that can go wrong from its use. Now, not all filler is HA filler. Some is derived in other ways, but not so much used anymore. It used to be derived from rooster comb, okay, that part of the rooster head.
Mm-hmm.
It's been derived from hamster, ovarian hamster, something or other. Animal derived, I should say. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it is kind of wow that it has this effect. Yeah, but at what cost is it really safe? That's where my mind goes. And then you brought up the plasma, the PRP, plasma rich.
PRP, maybe that's what it is.
PRP. Yeah. And so that's when, they're spinning your own platelets and they're, breaking it up and getting the good stuff out and then reapplying it into the system or into the body. And the biggest risk of that is obviously cross-contamination. Anytime you put needles into the skin and you take something out and you put it back in, you could cross-contaminate. Very dangerous. I'm not sure. I mean, I've looked at a lot of before and afters and been researching this for quite some time because the question comes up a lot. I'm just not sure I'm seeing results, good enough results that warrant the potential risk of getting an infection or an adverse reaction from it. So I'm kind of on the fence with that one. I will say, as far as adverse event reports go, there's not as many associated with PRP for sure.
Good to know. I'm glad we covered that. Well, where can people find you and connect with you? You have NeverTox on Instagram, I know. Love what you're doing over there, but share all those resources and ability to connect.
Okay, so we're on most of the social media platforms, obviously Instagram, and then on Facebook as well. I am using Threads, which goes hand in hand with Instagram. And so when we implemented Threads, we decided to let Twitter go. We're all Threads now. And then we have an inactivated TikTok. And we inactivated TikTok because we just weren't reaching people there. And we would spend time, and team members would spend a lot of time creating content, and it was just not being seen. And so we decided that our efforts were better spent elsewhere. We are on YouTube, and I'm working to develop that further. And then, of course, we have our website, which is really designed to reach the international folks. That's Tox, Tox, safety.com. And that website is loaded with all the emergency information if someone receives this product and is showing symptoms of botulism. And then there's just a ton of information there, some that I went over today and more, to educate just the general public on this product and what botulinum toxin is, what it does, how it works, what to do if you have side effects or somebody, and all the resources for that. And then, of course, our support group is also linked on the website, and we house that right now, not permanently, but right now it's on Facebook because it offers us tools to manage 40,000 people. But anybody can join there. So whether you're someone who is suffering or you just want to learn about the toxin or you are a medical provider, anybody can join us there, and it's on Facebook. So those are the primary places I can be found. And then also DM and Messenger and email is also fine. There's a whole bunch of us that monitor that. I shouldn't say a whole bunch. I mean, 3 or 4 of us. But that to me is a bunch because it's very helpful.
Yeah.
But we all monitor that to get back to messages.
Well, Gretch, we are so thankful for you. This is a niche of our health world that we needed to hear from. We need to help your voice get out there.
Thank you.
To bring the awareness that people are, it goes along with so many aspects, like I said, of the health world, that we just need to be mindful and to double check and to look into things. And so you have brought so much education here today. We are so grateful. Thank you for all you're doing and just being that resource for people that when they experience this, that they have somewhere to go. And that is you. So you are a blessing. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We will see you all next time, same place. Bye for now. Thanks for joining The Revolution, where we urge you to not just listen, but act. Make sure to hit the follow button to never miss an episode, subscribe to the weekly newsletter below, and fuel this podcast's growth by rating, reviewing, and blasting this episode across your network. Knowledge is power, but only if you implement it. Until next time.